Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. You're in for a treat today like you've never had because we have back Paula Sima, excuse me. Paula, first of all, welcome. And see, she's already started laughing, so you know you're going to have fun.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Paula.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me. I believe the last time I was welcomed on this platform is when you decided to be the incredible human being that you are and interview all the speakers of PodFest in your network. So it's good to be back.
It's certainly good to have you back, and it's been far too long. I just saw Paula a couple of weeks ago. We were both at Podcast Movement in Dallas, and I realized that over the past 3, maybe 4 years, Paula has worked as staff in Podcast Movement Evolutions and PodFest. So I really wanted to explore that part of Paula's regime. What's it like to be staff, and really what's your perspective? I've had the opportunity to meet some of your colleagues at Podcast Movements. Let's just start with Podcast Movement. What were your, first of all, did you know Todd Cochrane?
I did. And I want to say rest in peace because that was shocking. And it's very it is a reminder that we are on borrowed time and we should take every moment as it is. And that's why I'm grateful I was able to be in because I wasn't going to come. So I'm glad I came. I'm glad I got to hug him. And I'm glad I got to hug Tom too, because what Todd has reminded us, like, this is Todd. And then earlier we had, what's his name? Oh my God, from PodFest, who also passed away randomly. And Todd, the last thing he told me was, see you at PodFest. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? In my head, because I knew I might not be going to PodFest next year, but I didn't expect that. Are you sure? Meaning that he's not gonna be with us. So hug your people. If you get a chance to be around your people, be around your people, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. And literally the day before I found out the news, I sent him an email. I didn't know he was dying, but I sent him an email, and then I woke up the next day to find out that he was dead. So it's a hard time for the community, for the podcasting community, because Todd is a pod farm. PodFest has always been my number one place because I learned everything about podcasting and conferences of podcasting and everything from PodFest. Just he has been around PodFest all the time. He has been around podcast movement. He's one person who always talks shit to me. Like the first conversation when I met him, it's not a conversation I can even talk about it loud to people because that's how Todd is. Like, it really gets raw. And when you have a brand that says talk shit with you, people really think you really want to talk shit all the time. So we really talk about it.
So you're right. Todd was everywhere, and he was in the Podcasting Hall of Fame. He was one of the old guys of compliance, although he's younger than I am. And the thing that struck me, Paula, about Todd was he gave so much back to us. He had 2 or 3 different podcasts going every week. He was at every conference. You could pick up the phone and call him anytime. You didn't have to have an account or be doing business with him. He would talk to anybody, and it really speaks to some of the OGs, old guys and old girls podcasting, that they're like that and they share. And I mean, that's how I learned. I learned from people like Todd. I learned from people like Chris Krimitsos, and they communicated to people like you and me, you got to give back to your community because we may not be around here one day, and you're going to be the ones that people are looking up to. So he was a
Oh my
great role
God,
model.
that's such
Yeah.
a those are such hard shoes to fill. Because even Tom, I believe I'm glad that I got to even give you a little bit of your flowers this year, and that's why I'm very big about giving people their flowers while they're still alive, because you never know. So you say that he was a big giver. So are you. Like, you have this incredible heart, and you keep giving back to us little people who are still up and coming and figuring this world out. So we thank you as well. We thank you, and we thank everybody. And Todd is going to be deeply missed. I've tried not to cry as much, but emotions, grief, you would think at this time you'd be used to death because, again, we're all going to die. Like, nobody's meant to live forever, and we keep losing people. But it's such a devastating thing when the people who are pure, kind souls are the ones dying, and no offense, but the evil ones are continue living. It feels like the world is robbing us of good people. But I'm grateful that I got to meet him and just And you're right, like you could just call him and talk to him about anything, whether you have an account with him or not. And I liked how he was willing to push, like he would really push you. Sometimes I get so angry, man, and I'm like, why are we even doing this? But in a way, in a sense, it's pushing you to challenge yourself. And I like that. I like people who are willing to challenge us in the sense that we end up challenging ourselves. So I'm grateful that I'm in good company, and you as well, Tom. I just want to say I'm very grateful for you, and I'm glad that I got to see you a few weeks. And every time I got to see you around, I'll just run to you and hug you, even if I saw you 5, 10 minutes ago.
So when Paula says she runs and hugs you, she doesn't run and hug you. She runs and jumps on you and gives you a full body hug. And she's better at it today, but she always calls me Tom Fox. Tom Fox, Tom Fox, Tom Fox. Yeah, I told my wife, I said, yeah, she's one of the few that calls me Tom Fox. So I always
Because
say
it's such a
Paula.
cool name. Like you have your first and last name are all 3 letters, like Tom Fox. And I think there was a book when I was a kid, which was a Mr. Fox, and the owner was Tom. So it kind of brings me back to my childhood memories, and maybe that's why I connect with you. Because no offense, you have this hat, and you kind of look like my dad. The only difference is black and you're white, but you're all like short. So to me, it feels like a piece of home is with me when you are around. And you do your own coffee. It's funny because my dad also started doing coffee and graining beans back in Tanzania. So like there are things that make me feel like I'm with my dad here as well, even though my dad is all the way in Tanzania.
Tell us about, you had a really unique role this year at Podcast Movement. Everybody had to come by and see you. I don't know if you would, what your title was, stage manager or running a stage, but could you tell us about what your role was? And you just seemed to absolutely love it and had a ton of fun. So tell us about what you did this year at Podcast Movement.
I love being a stage manager. I love it. My background is in events and hospitality. I feel like I can't go to conferences and go to talks and just pay attention because my head cannot take all those information at the same time. So being a stage manager helps me because I'm a person who likes connecting with people and networking. So it gives me that freedom to do that, especially with the speakers who maybe the good thing about this conference is the speakers do stick around and are very good to talk to people or anything, but sometimes time runs depending on their schedule or whatever. So being a stage manager means that you're in charge of making sure your speaker comes on in time, making sure they finish in time. You're their time management. So when there are 5 minutes or whatever, and then you also run the mic for Q&A. And I just love it because I get to meet people who probably I wouldn't have if I was just attending by listening. And the best part is they pay you. So it's just fun, and it's a different way to meet people you'd never meet. And also I like being busy. And I remember I used to say this. I think I learned around COVID when I had to literally stand still because I've always had 2, 3 jobs. Like I'm always running from one thing to one thing. I'm always working on this and this. So when COVID happened, I had to stay still. Like everybody had to stay still. There was nothing happening. And I realized that difference about being busy and being productive. So as much as I like being busy, I love being busy in a productive way. And being a room manager is a productive way, helping people, making sure they get to where they want to get to, or connecting them with somebody they're looking for, or helping. I like to be of service. That's just it. I like to be of service.
After the conference, Todd wrote a long LinkedIn article.
LinkedIn, I remember I saw it about the
And,
partnership and the differences it felt at Podcast Movement this year. Yes.
and that got a lot of attention. And I was one of the few, or one of the many, who commented on it. And I felt like he was saying that Podcast Movement had gone corporate, as opposed to PodFest Expo, which I think is still very focused on the creator and maybe the solo or smaller podcaster. As I have 2 networks, but I'm a creator. So I feel like I'm still a creator, even if I'm in the business of podcasting. But I want to be at a conference where I'm talking to other business people. I want to do deals. I want to talk to people about sponsorship or whatever it may be. And I feel like Podcast Movement gives me that chance. But what, from your perspective, how would you assess this year's podcast movement?
To be honest, again, last year in DC was my first podcast movement. So I'm still a newbie at podcast movement compared to PodFest, which I've been attending since 2021. But you're right, like one of the reasons, like even when I used to ask people what's the difference between PodFest and podcast movement, they were like, PodFest is really catered to indie creators. And it feels like a family, like you're going home for Thanksgiving or something.
Right.
And then podcast movement is very catered to corporate. Once you are ready to take your podcast to a different level and that sort. And the partnership did bring a lot of conversations on LinkedIn, especially in the Black communities, in the women as well. Because again, when you look at the partnership, and I actually photobombed that picture when they took their announcement photo. You will see there's one which they really liked, and there's little black short girl with braids, which I had blonde and orange braids with a tongue out on the picture, and it's very funny. But I was giving you color because it's all old white men. Like, no offense, but there was no women, there was no people of color or anything. So people worried about that. Like, it really is going very corporate, because the people who are up there making these decisions, are they really making decisions for also independent? Because how do you understand how independent is going to? Because you guys are on a very different level right now, which is, I went to the Ambies this year for the first time in Chicago, and I was like, oh, maybe this is why I don't even feel like applying for the Ambies, because you're fighting with everybody who was getting an award on the stage was thanking their team. Like, they have a whole team. I'm the only team I have. So that, I could understand people's discussions on that. And I like that people are having open discussions. Top Webster was also in there willing to answer, to have these conversations and discuss further. So maybe there is hope if they're willing to hear. But again, I do feel like, especially this year compared to last year, I feel like it felt smaller. Like a lot of people, there were not a lot of people like last year in DC. And we were both there in Chicago as well. But everybody says, because it was my first Evolution, so everybody does say that Evolution is very few people. But one thing I noticed in Evolution is most people were leaving after their talk. Again, these are corporate people, right? So they do not have time to hang around for all 3-4 days and talk to people as much as they would want. I feel like either because also the economy right now, these tickets are not cheap, and podcast movement does the events in very expensive hotels. Not everybody can afford to attend, even though they do end up giving out free tickets, but you're giving out them very late for people to even plan their travels to be there. So I think overall, I feel like this year was fewer people, and even the discussions, everybody felt like a little bit worried about where podcast movement might be going. People are excited to see how next year, especially since it's going to New York. Some people have bad feelings about it being in New York, because some people are excited about San Diego. I feel like San Diego would have been much better. New York feels busy already, so I don't know how that will work. But it's interesting, and that's the thing about life and even podcasting. It's constantly evolving, right? And you gotta ride the changes. So I'm curious to see how that continues, but I'm worried for not only them, like for the podcasting community, to be honest, especially the independent ones.
Let's maybe then focus on PodFest Expo, because I think we both love that conference. I tell people
it's home. PodFest Expo is home.
I can't remember which year, but it was the first one after the pandemic, and I went up on stage, and the person that was in front of me was a Black transgender from Chicago. And I went up and put my arm around him, and I said, "This is what PodFest Expo is all about. I'm a white corporate lawyer, and she's not." And to me, that was the perfect example of what the family that Chris and Katie Krimitsos have created. And you're absolutely right. And I tell people, you go once, you're part of the family. It doesn't matter how many times you go, you're a part of it. And I don't know how they've maintained that, but they have. And it, I think, is a very conscious decision. And I feel every year I go, my family increases.
So true.
And it's just incredible. And the quality of the presentations are just as strong as podcast movement. Many times it's the same people, but there's also a wide variety of others. And so in terms of, I guess my response to Todd is, hey, I go to both. Now I'm in the position where I can afford both, but I learn from both. It's one of the things that I remember the first one I went to, I sat down at a table and there were some young guys there, and it turned out they were in college and they'd gotten pay it forward tickets. And that's how I got involved with Pay It Forward. So I told Chris, I want to be involved. This is the energy level they brought was a lot more than mine. And it was just infectious. And so it's, and Chris tells the stories of, I think it was a taxi driver got a ticket and started a podcast because of the Pay It Forward program, and just several people who couldn't otherwise attend, he was able to get them tickets. And so that's, it's really a program that's helped a lot of people and brought so many more voices into our community. How do you feel about PodFest Expo?
Oh, PodFest is always going to be home for me, to be honest, because I started my podcast in 2020. And I remember towards the end of 2020, I believe they did VidFest virtually, and Buzzsprout gave me a ticket and I went, and I loved everybody. People were, it's not follow me on social media and then they're not like, you follow them and they follow back and they interact with you, like they give you tools and they answer your questions and they're quick to jump on a call with you. Like it felt very accessible. And I remember in 2021, I ended up applying to be a speaker for a case study speaking when they did their virtual one. And in my head, I was trying to be comfortable with the word no, because I was still new in podcasting. I was like, I need to learn that not everybody's going to give me opportunities or say yes, especially being new. So I wanted to be comfortable with no. But then I got accepted. So PodFest has given me my first with everything. Then I went in person for the first time in 2022 because I couldn't go to 2021 when they did the small one in Tampa towards the end of the year. But I went to the 2022, which they did it in May. And I will always love that hotel because it had a lazy river and I kept enjoying that. But I went and everybody was so welcoming. Mind you, I've already known some people virtually, but you know, online, you never know if these people are really real, the feeling. But when I went, people were excited to see me. People welcomed me. It felt like I was really coming home, like a homecoming. I got accepted. People didn't care that I enjoyed drinking beer and I was drinking probably all the time, but I was still making sense. People didn't care how I dressed, who I was. Like people really just wanted to know you as a person and your podcast and your journey. And that for me, like I went to PodFest from being a nobody to a volunteer to an ambassador to winning a Community Heroes Award, which is still a shock to me, to being a mayor and a governor. But Chris has created a community where you go once, the next time you don't feel like you're new anymore. Like you only knew the first day you enter those buildings. After the first day, you're no longer new. You are just part of the family, and people welcoming. People just want to help. People want to, even if you're standing alone, just to have a break because it can get exhausting and you're like, let me just, but people come to you, why are you alone? Let's go. And you're like, no, I'm being alone by purpose. Take a break. At PodFest, if I look like I'm losing energy or I'm sad, people coming to me, who pissed you off? Who do we need to fight? I'm like, nobody pissed me off because people are so used to seeing me happy and high energy. So even if I take a second, people know. I don't think I ever spend any money at PodFest. People are always inviting me to lunch and dinner and they want to pay for me. People are always making sure I have Red Bull or Budweiser because those are my drinks. People just, I told Chris, I was like, I will go to every other conference because I'm a person who wants to see and try different places. Like you have to, you can't just take somebody's word because everybody's experience is going to be different depending on how they they take on the experience. But then I'm like, PodFest is just when you're going home for Thanksgiving, but with all your family that you love. No auntie that you're trying to avoid, no drunk, like everybody that you love. I've made connections that are part of my family. I don't even consider them friends. Shout out to the Moped Boys from day one. Shout out to Jen. Shout out to you, Tom Fox. Like every time I see you, even in other conferences, you get excited. You bring me coffee. Like now, people, you remember you gave me that whole bag, and then because I told people how much your coffee is good, everybody started hunting me down. No, Tom Fox gave you coffee. We want to share. I'm like, no, this is all for me. But it's just, and you go to these conferences, you still meet people from PodFest. Oh yes, we're excited to be at new places, but then you find even the PodFest family kinda making sure we get time to also hang out, and we take pictures and send them to Chris, so put them in the PodFest community in Facebook. So there's nothing like it. Like I've been to different conferences and I love them for different reasons, but there's nothing like PodFest. I'm sorry.
No, you're spot on, spot on. So are you going to be there this year? I hope so.
Everybody's, what do you mean the governor is not going to be there at PodFest? Because I came back, you remember VidFest happened after I left you guys in Dallas. I came back to
Right.
Atlanta to VidFest. And Chris was like, why weren't you here yesterday? I was like, I was in Dallas. But the good thing is, even when I go to these other conferences, we tell people about PodFest. Like, because people will ask us, how do you guys know each other? PodFest. Have you heard about PodFest? You need to be at PodFest. It feels like we're recruiting, even though you don't need to recruit for PodFest. But the plan is to be there. If everything works out, I would never miss a chance to be a PodFest. Like, and I think the reason PodFest works, even when they end up paid forward, shout out to you and thank you for being part of Paid Forward. And we're glad it's there. But even when if it happens like later on towards the event, one thing I like it is people always know that PodFest is always going to be in Orlando, right? So unlike this podcast movement or this other where they keep on moving in every city depending on your budget and everything, like Orlando, you already know it's going to be in Orlando in January. So even if you don't have a ticket yet, you can make plans while you wait for that free ticket. And so shout out to Paid Forward. We appreciate it. I believe my first time was a free ticket. And every other day, I've never bought a ticket to PodFest, but because when you're a speaker, you don't buy a ticket. But I bring a lot of people to PodFest. So that's my way of supporting.
So Paula, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you or find out more about your podcast, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
I'm very good at Instagram at TalkShowWP. You can find me on any platform at TalkShowWP and LinkedIn at Paula Sima. But Instagram is my favorite. I respond quickly. I hate emails, so don't send me an email unless necessary because I don't get back to you as often. But slide in those DMs, Instagram. And Tom Fox, before we call it off, you also mentioned you wanted to ask me why I choose to work the events instead of attending them. Can I answer that real quick?
Sure.
So one thing I'll tell everybody, I went to school in Malaysia, undergrad for events and hospitality. And we always had to do internships and volunteering and everything. And I've learned that you can attend as an attendee, but you have restrictions, right? Depending on your ticket or where. But when you volunteer or even do these room managers, which they pay, room managers at podcast movement pays compared to volunteering, you get access in different ways and you get to learn and meet people that you probably wouldn't even meet. I remember in the first time I volunteered at PodFest, I was meeting because I was checking in people. So I got to speak to people that I probably wouldn't have. Again, it becomes busy, hectic. You might have never met or anything. So when you're checking them in, you get to have a conversation, you get to find them later, or you get access to areas that you wouldn't. And you also learn a lot more than the air. You get to have access to the recording so that you can listen to them while you're home in your comfortability and learn in your own pace.
Wow. That's great. All right. Thanks. And I'm going to hold you to that promise to be in Orlando.
Anytime I have a chance to see you, Tom Fox, I don't take that for granted, especially now that we lost Todd. So if I have to come to PodFest next year, anyways, I will make sure I come just so I can see my favorite people. Because again, as I said, tomorrow is not guaranteed.